Welcome back, everyone. This is our introduction to QSource. We are now going to be entering into the second quadrant. So let's share my screen. All right. Here we go. I'll just get it all queued up. Perfect. And here we are. Excellent. So this is the second quadrant. Live right. We explored in our first section the first quadrant, get right. And there were 12 Q points. Now we're entering into the second quadrant, live right. So let's explore this. Let's study it and see what the second quadrant of QSource is about. So exploring the second quadrant, live right. Brothers, once a man has gotten right, right? Because the first quadrant is get right. So once you have gotten right, when he's taken full ownership of his habits, his health, his faith, and relationship, he's ready to take the next step in his growth as a high impact man. That next step is the second quadrant, live right. This quadrant is all about how you live with others. It's about your relational world, your connections, your character, your influence, because no high impact man thrives in isolation. A man who gets right for himself only will eventually stall out, but a man who lives right with and for others becomes a force for transformation. To live right means to be relationally aligned, to show up consistently for the people around you with integrity, humility, and purpose. It means recognizing that your life isn't just about what you do, it's about who you build, who you lift, and who you lead. This quadrant challenges you to move beyond self-improvement into the realm of impact. So we go from self-improvement, now we're going into the realm of impact. Remember, high impact man, right? So we're going into the realm of impact. The Q points in this quadrant will stretch you. They'll ask if you're truly making impact, not just noise. They'll examine your influence. Is it accidental or intentional? You'll be called to missionality, living with direction, not just motion. You'll be challenged to transfer habits, to receive correction, to welcome accountability, and to lock onto those you are meant to sharpen and develop. Friends, this isn't about pretending to have it all together. This is about being real, consistent, and committed in your relationships. It's about living in such a way that others grow just by being around you. When a man lives right, he becomes a steady presence, a trusted brother, a rock in uncertain times. He doesn't just make friends, he builds brotherhood. And friends, let's be honest. Living right takes work. It takes daily humility. It takes stepping into conversations you'd rather avoid. It takes choosing presence when distraction would be easier. But this is the path of the high impact man. The man who is willing to go deep, not just go wide. The first quadrant was about inner transformation. The second quadrant is about relational transformation. It's about how the strength within you begins to strengthen those around you. This is where character becomes connection and where growth becomes influence. Friends, let's live right. So let's get into it. So the first Q point, dear friends, is impact. This is quadrant 2, Q point 1, impact. Forcible contact to strong effect. So impact, right? Let's explore this. Here are 2 hymns right here. Impact, quadrant 2, Q point 1. For impact, forcible contact to a strong effect. Every man leaves a mark. The question is, what kind of mark are you leaving? What kind of mark are you leaving? Impact is the hymn's first daily discipline in the second quadrant. It means making forcible contact with others in such a way that it creates real, lasting, positive change. It's not about popularity. It's not about being loud. It's about showing up with substance and leaving people stronger than when you found them. The truth is, the world is full of men who brush past others without ever truly connecting. They play it safe. They hide behind busyness. They drift. But the high-impact man moves differently. His life is intentional. His presence is felt. When he steps into a space at home, at work, in the gloom, people are better for it. Impact doesn't happen by accident. It comes from living with conviction, rooted in daily disciplines. A man cannot pass on what he does not possess. That's why the first quadrant, get right, comes first. But once he's aligned, the high-impact man steps into every room asking not, what can I get? But how can I serve? How can I strengthen? Who can I build? This kind of impact shows up in everyday choices. Taking the time to ask your child a meaningful question instead of checking your phone. Speaking truth to a brother in love, even when it's uncomfortable. Making space for the man on the fringe, pulling him into the circle. Living your values when no one's watching. Because integrity is contagious. Impact doesn't require a platform. It requires proximity and presence. You don't have to be a public figure to be a difference maker. You just need to be a man who chooses people over passivity, truth over silence, and service over comfort. But there are enemies to impact. Comfort, fear, pride, distraction. These things will pull you into isolation. They'll convince you your life doesn't matter. But it does. If you don't impact the world will impact you, and usually not for the better. So today, dear friends, the question isn't whether you make contact, you already do. The question is, are you making strong contact that leaves others better? Be the man whose presence shifts the atmosphere, not with ego, but with integrity, empathy, and fire. You were made to make impact. Dear friends, now go prove it. So there we are. That was the first Q point of the second quadrant, impact. How cool is that? So let's go on to the next Q point, influence. So this is the second Q point of the second quadrant. Influence. This is the power to affect others through virtue and character. Influence. Let's find out what this is all about. Influence, the power to affect others through virtue and character. Impact is the moment your life collides with another's for good. But influence is what carries that impact forward. It's the slow burning fire of your example, the ripple effect of consistent life, lived with integrity, humility, and truth. Influence isn't about position, popularity, or performance. It's not reserved for CEOs, pastors, or social media personalities. According to the QSource, influence is the power to affect others through virtue and character. That means every man, no matter his role, has the capacity to be a powerful influencer if he lives a life worth following. The high impact man understands that he is always influencing with every word, every choice, every response, whether in the gloom, the kitchen, the boardroom, or on a text thread. His example is either strengthening others or weakening them. There is no neutral. Influence is built in small moments, not grand speeches. It's when you show up to a beatdown after a sleepless night, when you apologize first, even if you weren't fully wrong, when your wife and kids know they're safe with you because you're the same man in public and private. Friends, this kind of influence is rare. That's why it matters. But make no mistake, influence requires proximity. You cannot affect others if you're always on the run or hiding behind a screen. The high impact man is a man who shows up, who locks shields, who leads from the front, not by force, but by example. And influence must be guarded. Pride can corrupt it. Hypocrisy can ruin it. That's why the high impact man is always tuning his heart, checking his motives, seeking wisdom, and surrounding himself with men who tell the truth. At its core, influence is legacy, not in the sense of trophies or titles, but in the people who stand taller because they walked with you. Your influence isn't measured in moments, it's measured in men. So, dear friends, ask yourself, who's watching you? Who's following your lead even when you don't realize it? And are they being led closer to purpose or farther from it? Your life is louder than your words. We have to lead with character, influence with virtue. And remember, dear friends, someone's future is being shaped by how you live today. Influence. The second cue point of the second quadrant. So, dear friends, we are moving to the third cue point, missionality. Missionality is serving in the place where your mission and need intersect. Missionality. This is the third cue point of the second quadrant. Serving in the place where your mission and need intersect. Missionality is where your purpose meets the world's need. Friends, it's not just about being good. It's about doing good on purpose, where you are most needed and most called. In the QSource, missionality is defined as serving in the high impact zone, that space where your personal mission aligns with the world's deep need. This is what separates a life of noise from a life of meaning. A man can be busy all day and never be missional. He can hustle from meeting to meeting, scroll endlessly, parent distractedly, volunteer aimlessly, and still never live on mission. Very true. But the high impact man, he's different. He asks deeper questions. Where am I most needed? Where am I uniquely positioned to serve? What can I do? that no one else can do in quite the same way. That's right. Your mission field might be your kitchen table, your work crew, your neighborhood, a single younger man who needs guidance, a child who needs your full presence. Missionality isn't about platform, it's about placement. You've been put somewhere on purpose, so don't miss it. And missionality requires clarity, focus, right? You must know your why. A high impact man doesn't just say yes to everything. He says yes to what matters most. He prioritizes impact. He lets his values drive his calendar. He understands that a man stretched too thin becomes a man with nothing to give. But here's the key. Missionality doesn't start with grand gestures. It starts with small, faithful steps. The extra 5 minutes you spend listening to someone's story, the quiet sacrifices you make for your family, the phone call you make to check in on a brother who's fading. These are missional moments and they multiply. Still, there are barriers, distraction, doubt, the lie that someone else will do it, the temptation to stay comfortable. But the high impact man knows comfort is the enemy of purpose. He refuses to let his gifts die unused or his influence go unfelt. Missionality is how you live right in motion. Purpose on the move. It's how you bring light to dark places. It's how you leave people better than you found them. Not by accident, dear friends, but by design. So today, ask yourselves, what is my high impact zone? Where does my mission meet real need? And there, dear friends, go there. Fully, boldly, and joyfully. Live on purpose. Live where it matters. So, dear friends, that was the third cue point of the second quadrant. Very missionality. So now, dear friends, we go to the fourth cue point of the second quadrant. This is positive habit transfer. Positive habit transfer. Say it, dear friends. Learn these cue points. So this is the second quadrant of QSource. This is the second quadrant. We're in the fourth cue point, positive habit transfer. Teaching others to form life-giving habits. So here's a high impact man, maybe the father, but as you can see, these are the shorties. He is displaying positive habit transfer. Positive habit transfer is the deliberate practice of instilling life-giving habits through crafting a dynamic where someone is listening to the teachers, learning on his own, and then passing along what he knows. So he's passing along here, as you can see, looks like Merkins or even the high plank position. He's teaching his shorties fitness. So you can see this, he's positively passing this habit transfer, giving this deliberate practice of passing his knowledge, his habits to the next generation. So what is the fourth cue point? Positive habit transfer. It's teaching others to form life-giving habits. This is one of the most powerful ways a high impact man impacts others. It's not through what he says. Words are cheap, dear friends. but through what he models, his actions, his deeds. Positive habit transfer is the daily discipline of teaching others how to build strong, life-giving patterns of living, not by lecture, but by example. This is where leadership becomes legacy. A high-impact man understands that people don't drift toward growth. They are shown how to grow. And the best way to show is to live it. Very true. The best way, dear friends, is to show, is to live it. Whether it's getting up early for a beatdown, prioritizing his marriage, praying with his children, or setting boundaries on screens, he's creating habits that echo. Positive habit transfer starts at home. Your kids aren't just watching your words, they're watching your patterns. And what you do with stress? How do you respond to failure? Are you present or always too busy? Your rhythms become their roadmap, and it continues in your shield lock, your workplace, your church, your neighborhood. Someone around you is always watching, wondering if a better way is possible. And when they see your consistency, they begin to believe that change is possible for them too. Remember, dear friends, the first quadrant was about self-transformation. Now this is about how you are making an impact on others, right? But here's the hard truth. Habits transfer whether we want them to do or not. If we live distracted, our people will too. If we default to anger, escape, or apathy, that's the blueprint we're handing down. The question isn't whether we're transferring habits. The question is, which one? That's really profound. That's why the high-impact man is vigilant. He does the hard work of auditing his life, replacing the toxic habits with healthy ones. That's why it's called positive habit transfer, because the habit transfer happens anyway. We're always passing. People are always watching us. But the high-impact man is vigilant. He does the hard work of auditing his life. He replaces the toxic habits with the healthy ones and stays aligned with his values. He invites feedback. He seeks mentors. He makes sure his walk matches his talk. He practices what he preaches, right? And he's not afraid to start small. He knows that little habits repeated over time shape identity. You remember in our first section, I'm Persian, and I said, ruse be ruse, day by day. That's how self-transformation happens, right? But even in the second quadrant, we have to, as mentioned, we have to be vigilant. This takes hard work. This is about every day ensuring that our actions are aligned. He makes sure his walk matches his talk. That means it's a daily vigilance, ruse be ruse, day by day. And he's not afraid to start small. He knows that the little habits repeated over time shape identity. A short morning prayer with your family, a text check-in with your shield lock, taking the phone out of the room during dinner. Each one adds up. Each one teaches. Positive habit transfer is slow work. And dear friends, sometimes thankless, often unseen, but over time, it multiplies into generational change. You're not just building a routine, you're building resilience. You're not just influencing a moment. You're forming a man. So what habits are you handing on? What story is your life telling? And who's becoming more like you without you even realizing it? Live wise, model boldly, teach the man how to walk in the light. So, dear friends, that was the fourth cue point in the second quadrant. We move on to the fifth cue point, accountability. Accountability. This is submission to standards through enforcement and consequences. To be accountable for your actions. Fifth cue point of the second quadrant. Accountability. Accountability, as mentioned, is submission to standards through enforcement and consequences. Brothers, welcome to the next step on the path of living right. Remember, this is living right. The first quadrant was get right. This is live right. If impact is the result of living with intention, and influence is our power rooted in virtue and character, then accountability is the guardrail that keeps you from veering off course. Accountability is the guardrail that keeps us from veering off course. It is not about control. It's about commitment. It's not about shame. It's about sharpening. A man without accountability is a man drifting, confident perhaps, but alone and untested. And untested strength, that's weakness in disguise. Accountability in the F3 sense means we willingly submit ourselves to a standard, a higher calling, a code of honor, a mission, and invite others to help hold us to it. It requires humility to say, I can't do this alone. It takes courage to say, please call me out if I fall. And it takes love, real brotherly love, to hold another man accountable with truth and grace. Why do we avoid accountability? Pride, fear, right? Pride and fear. The illusion of autonomy. We think freedom means no one telling us what to do. But friends, that's not freedom. That's chaos. Real freedom comes from structure, from knowing your boundaries and your purpose, from having brothers who love you enough to ask the hard questions. Let's be real. Without accountability, we slide, slowly, subtly, spiritually. Maybe we skip a workout, maybe we ghost a shield lock, maybe we hide a habit or keep a secret, and then shame creeps in and isolation grows. But when we lock shields with men who care more about our future than our feelings, we rise. Practical accountability looks like this. A shield lock asking, how's your marriage, really? A whetstone partner saying, you said you'd quit drinking, have you? A text at 5:01 a.m. that says, where were you, brother? It's uncomfortable, but it's essential. You see, impact doesn't come from perfection. It comes from persistence, and persistence requires accountability. Let us become the kind of men who ask for accountability, who receive it with humility, and who offer it with love. Because when we live under the standard, we help raise the standard, not just for ourselves, but for every man around us. Stay locked in, brothers. Stay accountable, because the mission is too great to walk alone. Accountability, right? The fifth cue point of the second quadrant. These are the guardrails. So good, right? So we go into the sixth cue point of the second quadrant. Correction. the willingness to receive and give constructive criticism. Now, this is so hard for so many people to receive criticism, but it's the willingness to receive and give constructive criticism. This is called correction. This is the sixth Q point. How we do it. Correction is the friction that sharpens a man. It's not easy, but it is essential. A man committed to living right must be willing to hear the hard truths and also speak them, not out of pride, but out of love. Out of love, dear friends, for your fellow brother. Correction isn't about tearing a brother down. It's about building him up by removing what's in the way of his growth. Most of us recoil from correction because of ego. We want affirmation, not feedback. But a high-impact man embraces correction because he knows it's a vital tool for transformation. He understands that correction doesn't wound, it refines. Dear friends, correction refines. It takes courage to receive it, and even more courage to offer it. But in F3, where we lock shields in trust and love, correction becomes a gift we give one another. Without correction, habits calcify into blind spots. Without correction, leaders drift off mission. Remember, missionality was one of our Q points. But without correction, leaders drift off mission. That's why we must normalize feedback, not fear it. Every PAX needs a brother who will speak truth, even when it stings. Every leader must cultivate the humility to listen deeply. See? To listen deeply, not defensively, and ask, where can I grow? Where can I grow? In our lives, correction might look like a brother pulling us aside and asking if we're truly honoring our commitments to our M, our wives, to our shorties, to our children, to our shield lock, our brothers who are building us closely. It might be a whetstone partner calling out pride, laziness, or compromise. In those moments, will you stiffen with pride or soften with gratitude? Proverbs 27, verse 6, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. Real brotherhood wounds in love because it cares about who you're becoming. Correction is a discipline, not a moment. When practiced consistently, it transforms a man from good to great. It removes blind spots, realigns purpose, and sharpens character. The high-impact man welcomes it. He gives it in love, and through it, he lives right. Yeah, as I was reading this and reflecting on it as I was reading, I was thinking of one of those individuals that hammer on these anvils. They hammer the sword. And when the sword comes out of the furnace, it's just a lump of metal. Just a lump of metal. But he has to beat it. He has to correct it, right? This is the Q point talking about correction. So he is hitting it. And it's so uncomfortable for the poor piece of metal. And he is correcting it. Strike after strike after strike after strike. And it is uncomfortable. And this is the transforming of a man from good to great. And the high impact man, that piece of metal, that lump of metal, it should welcome this and give into this, per se, uncomfortable situation. And through it, this piece of metal becomes refined. And through it, the high impact man, he lives right, right? So dear friends, this was another cue point that we have just covered. That was our 6th cue point, correction. So our final cue point in the second quadrant is targeting. So this is the daily discipline of concentrating effort. On the hard charger, okay? So this is the daily discipline of concentrating effort on the hard charger. So let's explore what this means. In the QSource, targeting is the high impact man's deliberate act of focusing his relational and missional energy he has identified as most in need of influence. The hard charger. Every man is surrounded by noise, countless demands, distractions, and relationships vie for our attention. The high impact man doesn't scatter his influence aimlessly. He targets it with precision. He looks out at the world, identifies a man who's drifting, struggling, or stuck, and says, "That one I will pour into him." Targeting is not random. It's not passive. It's a strategic decision to direct your energy where it can produce the most impact. Remember this? The first quadrant was about self-transformation, self-discipline. Now this is about impact, this second quadrant. Your effect on others. So targeting, it's missionality with focus. You're focusing, targeting. Targeting isn't random, it's not passive. It's a strategic decision to direct your energy where it can produce the most impact. Just as a warrior aims before he fires, like with a bow and arrow. The high impact man discerns before he moves. He doesn't try to fix everyone, but he does commit to help someone. The man you target may be the guy who shows up to a workout but never talks. The father who's overwhelmed and isolated. The colleague who's sharp but purposeless. The younger man who reminds you of yourself. The neighbor who's caught in addiction or apathy. Targeting means you notice him. Do you genuinely notice all your brothers, or are they just acquaintances? Do you spend that time to notice them? You pursue him. You listen. Remember, it's not you deeply listen, right? You deeply listen. You encourage, you challenge, and you walk beside him. You don't do it to save him. This is very important, dear friends. I'll pause here. We don't do these things for reward or reciprocity. You do it because someone once did it for you. We do these things out of love for our fellow brothers. In F3, this is more than just being friendly. It's about being intentional. A high impact man understands that multiplication doesn't happen by accident. If we want to build leaders, we must first see them, believe in them, and walk with them. So dear friends, yes, there's challenges to this. Targeting takes time, and time is costly, yeah? It requires patience. Because growth is slow, it demands humility, because it's not about you, all right? But the fruit is eternal. A man who is targeted well often becomes a man who targets others. And that's how legacy is built, one life at a time. So, Pax, who's your hard charger? Who's waiting for your invitation, your call, your pursuit? Don't leave it to chance. Target him, invest, stay the course. And remember, live right isn't just about you. It's about who are you lifting? Who are you lifting? So, dear friends, that is the second quadrant, right? Excellent. We'll see you in the third quadrant. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.